You're listening live on YouTube to the Fourth and Long podcast with Alec Pecado. On today's show, you will get my ACC conference preview as well as my top 25 coaches. So let's get started. I'm going to do this conference preview a little different. I'm going to show you schedule and roster for each team. So let's get started with my non-bowl teams in the ACC. First one being North Carolina Tar Heels. This is year 2 under head coach Bill Belichick. And let's take a look at their schedule. So they open the year, and there's one big reason I have them as a non-bowl team, is you look at their schedule. Obviously, they play TCU week 1. That is a week 0, correction. That is a neutral site game. I don't think they're going to beat TCU. They got slaughtered by TCU last year. I think TCU slaughters them again this year. Then week 1, they get ETSU, which that should be a win. I say should. Week 2, they get ETSU. Because week 1, they're going to have a off day, a bye week because they're coming back from Dublin. So week 2 against ETSU, that's going to be a win. So you're looking at 1-1. They go to Clemson. There's no way, unless Clemson's going to fall apart, which I will talk about Clemson later on in the episode. But they're not beating Clemson. So that drops them to 1-2. They're not beating Notre Dame. 1-3. Pitt, it's a road game, but Pitt has a new quarterback. Narduzzi's still the coach. He's a good defensive-minded head coach, but I see them dropping that to go to 1-4. Then they get Duke on the road. I think they can beat Duke, so that puts them 2-4. Then they get Syracuse at home. That's a loss, 2-5. Lose to Miami, 2-6. I think they beat UConn to go to 3-6. Louisville. I forget. I think there's a chance they could beat Louisville, but I think they lose. So that makes them 3-7. Then they play Virginia on the road. I also think that's a loss, 4-8. And then they lose to North Carolina State to go to 4-9. Wait, no. So let's redo this. So they lose to TCU, 0-1. Beat ETSU, 1-1. Lose to Notre Dame, 1-2. Lose to Pitt, 1-3. Beat Duke, 2-3. Lose to Syracuse, 2-4. Lose to Miami, 2-5. Beat UConn, 3-5. Lose to Louisville, 3-6. Beat Virginia. We're going to try this one more time. So they're going to lose to TCU. So they're 0-1. Beat ETSU, 1-1. Lose to Clemson, 1-2. Lose to Notre Dame, 1-3. Lose to Pitt, 1-4. Beat Duke, 2-4. I'm actually going to say they beat Syracuse this time to go to 3-4. Lose to Miami, 3-5. Beat UConn, 4-5. Lose to Louisville, 4-6, beat Virginia 5-6, and lose to North Carolina State 5-7. So I think North Carolina will go 5-7 this year, and I'm going to show you right now where I think the critical stretch is. That if it does not go well, I think it is Notre Dame, the Clemson through Pitt stretch. Those 3 games. If North Carolina loses all 3 of those, Belichick is probably going to be fired. And now, let's take a look at the roster for North Carolina this year. This jumbled mess. So, this is not what I wanted. We do not want to see Amazon on here, ladies and gentlemen. Sorry. It's actually just going to be scheduled. So North Carolina is going to go 5-7 this year. That is the first non-bowl team. So let me pencil that down so we keep track. The next non-bowl team I have in the ACC is the Boston College Eagles. If I could find them right there. And let's take a look at their schedule. So Boston College, this is year, I believe, 4 for head coach Bill O'Brien. They open year at Cincinnati. Now, Cincinnati's struggled in the Big 12. I think Boston College can win this. But if they lose, they're 0-1. And I'm going to say they do lose to Cincinnati. It is not easy to win at Cincinnati. So Boston College goes to 0-1. Then they play Rutgers. Rutgers is like that hard candy that you eat and you're like, why did I eat it in the first place? I should not have eaten it. I think they beat Rutgers, so they're 1-1. Then they play Maine. I think they beat Maine 2-1. They're gonna lose. They're gonna lose their next 2 games. They're gonna lose to Virginia Tech 2-2. They're gonna lose to SMU 2-3. I think they're gonna lose to Pitt 2-4. At Georgia Tech, lost 2-5. At Duke, that could be maybe a win, so they're 3-5. At home against Florida State, that's a loss. Rutgers was a win, so they would. They're 3-6 going into the Florida State game. I think they lose to Florida State, so they're 3-7. Okay, let's redo this. So they lose to Cincinnati 0-1. Beat Rutgers 1-1. Beat Maine 2-1. Lose to Virginia Tech 2-2. Lose to SMU 2-3. Lose to Pitt 2-4. Lose to Georgia Tech 2-5. Beat Duke 3-5. Lose to both Florida State, so 2-6. Lose to Notre Dame 2-7. Lose to Syracuse 2-8. No, 2-9. And lose to Miami 2-10. So Boston College goes 2-10 in 2026. And I think Bill O'Brien, I'll tell you the stretch of games where he needs to be careful. It's from the Virginia Tech game to the Georgia Tech game that he needs to be on high alert, because if he loses all of those games and they go over in all those games, and don't get a single win, I think that's when he gets fired. So now we get to my bowl teams in the ACC. And my first bowl team in the ACC is Florida State. And I know what everybody's saying. Oh, Alec, why are you so bullish on Florida State this year? This is a big year for Mike Norvell. He's another coach that's on the hot seat. So we take a look at Florida State's schedule. They open the year at home August 29th. Well, week 0 against New Mexico State. That's going to be a win, so they're 1-0. Then they come home September 7th and play SMU. Do I think there's a chance they could upset SMU? Absolutely. But do I think it happens? No. I think they drop to 1-1. Then they play Alabama. And I think they could. It's at Alabama. They're going to lose, so they're 1-2. They go to 2-2 after beating Central Arkansas. Then they play Virginia. I think they lose to Virginia. So they are now 2-3. This is the stretch where I think if they go 1-2 or 0-4, 1-3 or 0-4, Norvell's gone. They're going to beat Louisville. So they're now 3-3. They're going to lose to Miami, 3-4. Lose to Clemson, 3-5. So Norvell, he comes out of there with going 1-2. If he goes 1-2 in that stretch, I think his job is at least safe until probably so then they get Boston College. They're going to beat Boston College. So that puts him at they were 3-5 after the Clemson game. They beat Boston College. That makes it 4-5. They beat Pitt on the road to go to 5-5. They're going to beat North Carolina State to go to 6-5. And I'm going to be bullish here and say they beat the Gators to go to 7-5. So Florida State this year is going to go 7-5. And I think Mike Norvell does save his job for one more year. The next bowl team I have in the ACC is the Syracuse Orange. The Orangemen. Syracuse's schedule is as follows. They will open 2026 on September 5th at home against New Hampshire. They're going to win that. Then they get Cal at home. I also have Cal as a bowl team, but I think they beat Cal. So they're 2-0. Then they get Pitt on the road. They're going to go to 3-0. They're going to beat UConn to go to 4-0. Can they beat Virginia? Maybe. It's at Virginia. They're 4-0 going into that Virginia game. I think they lose to Virginia, so they're 4-1. Then they get Louisville at home. I think that's going to be a win, so they're 5-1. At North Carolina, I had them winning that game, so they're 6-1. Then they get this mini 2-game stretch, SMU and Clemson. I think they beat SMU to go to 8-1, lose to Clemson 8-2, beat North Carolina State 9-2, beat Boston College 10-2, lose to Notre Dame 10-3. And I know what you're going to say. Oh, you're delusional. There's no way Syracuse is going 10-3. I think they could go 10-3 as long as I believe it's Steven Jelly is their quarterback. As long as he stays healthy, they will have at least 8 wins. My next bowl team is the Stanford Cardinal. And again, I know what y'all are going to say. Oh, you're crazy. Stanford's not making a bowl game. I could be wrong, but most of the time, I would say 80% of the time, I'm right. I don't miss. Tavita Pritchard is the new head coach of Stanford, and here's their 2026 schedule. They open the year at home against Hawaii. I think they're going to win that. Then they play Miami September 4th. And I don't want to do this to Miami fans, but I think because Miami has to travel across the country to California, I think we see a really close competitive game, and Miami ends up getting upset by Stanford. So Stanford's 2-0. Then they have to travel across country to Durham, North Carolina to play Duke. And I think they're going to lose to Duke, so they're 2-1. Then they play Georgia Tech at home. And again, like I said about the Miami game, you get a team like Georgia Tech coming across the state from Georgia, across the country from Georgia to California. I think it's going to be very competitive, close game. And it's a night game, so it's ACC after dark. As we know, like Pac-12 after dark, anything can happen. I think we see another upset. So now you got Stanford at 3-1. Then they have to go play Wake Forest and Notre Dame. I think they're going to split. They will beat Wake Forest. So they beat Hawaii, they beat Miami, beat Duke, beat Georgia Tech. So they're 4-0. They're 5-0 going into the Notre Dame game. They will lose to Notre Dame. So they're 5-1. They play Elon. They're going to go to 6-1. I think they dropped to 6-2 after losing to North Carolina State, 6-3 after losing to Louisville, 6-4 after losing to Virginia Tech. I think they get to 7-4 after beating Cal, and they drop to 7-5 after losing to SMU. And I think Stanford fans would take that in year one under Tavia Pritchard. 7-5 going to a bowl game. And you would sign up if you're a Stanford fan, you would sign up for 7-5 every year if it means you're going bowling. My next bowl team in the ACC is the Cal Golden Bears. And I love this. And we take a look at Cal's schedule. Cal opens the year week 1 at home against UCLA. They will beat UCLA. I believe I also had Syracuse getting beat by Cal. So, what was Syracuse's record? 10-3. Yes, one of their 3 losses, I believe, was to Syracuse. No, they beat Syracuse. So Cal is now 2-0. They play Wagner. They're going to be 3-0. They get Clemson at home. Like I've said, the previous 2 teams I've done a record for in the ACC for bowl teams. It is, Stanford. So Cal welcomes in Clemson. And Clemson has to come across the country. I think Cal can pull off the upset here and beat Clemson to go to 4-0 to start the season. Then they get UNLV on the road. Okay. That's not that far of a trip. I think they beat UNLV. So they're now 5-0 going to the Virginia Tech game. The Virginia Tech game is at home, but it's not Brett Pry as head coach anymore. Kudos to Brett Pry. He was a good head coach at Virginia Tech. But I think Cal loses to Virginia Tech, so they're 5-1. They will go to 5-2 after losing to Wake Forest. 5-3 after losing to SMU. 6-3 after beating NC State. And yes, I'm going to remember that for when I do NC State. 7-3 after beating Virginia. 7-4 after losing to Stanford. 8-4 after beating Pitt. So I have Cal going 8-4 in 2026. Next bowl team I have for the ACC is Wake Forest. If I can find. There they are. Schedule. It was a successful year one for Wake Forest under their new head coach. They go into year number 2, and they start the year at home against Akron. They're going to win that, so they're 1-0. You play Purdue week 2. That's another win. They're 2-0. Then they get Miami at home. And it's not the same Miami as it was last year. They lost a lot of guys from that national championship runner-up team. Carson Beck, Keontae Scott, Akeem Mesidor, Ruben Bain, just to name a few. I think Wake Forest, and I might sound a little crazy, I think they can beat Miami. So they're 3-0 going to the Louisville game. And everybody's like, oh, is Wake Forest for real? I think they get thumped by Louisville. So they're 3-1. They get Stanford at home. And I think we just did Stanford a couple minutes ago, and I had them Wake Forest beating Stanford. So Wake Forest is now 4-1 going to that NC State game. I think they beat NC State to go to 5-1, but then they got to travel across country to Cal, and they're going to lose there to go to 5-2. I think they bounce back and beat UVA to go to 6-2. They'll go to 7-2 after beating the brakes off of Merrimack. 7-3 after losing to SMU. 7-4 after losing to Georgia Tech. And 8-4 after beating Duke. So for Wake Forest, 8-4, that's a success. I think Wake Forest fans would take that every day of the week. And twice on Saturday. My next bowl team in the ACC is the North Carolina State Wolfpack. If I can find them, they're right there. So North Carolina State. Dave Dorn had another decently good year. So North Carolina State has a weird open to the season. They start the year against Virginia in week 0. It's at Virginia. It's a neutral site game. I'm going to say NC State wins to go to 1-0. They beat Richmond 2-0. Vanderbilt, I'm going to say they beat Vandy, so they're 3-0. App State, I love me, the Happy Appies, but they're not going to beat North Carolina State. So North Carolina State's 4-0 going to the Louisville game. And I think they lose to Louisville. So they're 4-1. Did I say North Carolina State's going to beat Wake Forest? So they're 5-1. Then they go to Stanford. They beat Stanford 6-1. Lose to Cal 6-2. Beat Duke 7-2. Beat Syracuse 8-2. Lose to Florida State 8-3. And beat North Carolina 9-3. So the 2026 record for North Carolina State is 9-3. The next bowl team I have in the ACC this year is the Duke Blue Devils. And the drama here is that Duke has a new quarterback. And you look at Duke's schedule, I'm just going to say right off the bat, I think they're going 6-6. I'm not going to even go game by game here. I'm sorry, Duke fans. I'm just looking at your schedule. You're going to go 6-6. Split right down the middle. And the next bowl team we have in the ACC is the Pitt Panthers and Coach Pat Narduzzi. Pitt starts the year at home against Miami of Ohio. I think that's a win, so they're 1-0. Then they get UCF at home. They're 2-0. They will beat Syracuse to go to 3-0, beat Bucknell to go to 4-0. Then they go to Virginia Tech. That's going to be a loss, so they're 4-1. 5-1 after beating North Carolina. 6-1 after beating Miami. I think they lose. Correction, 6-1 after beating Boston College. They will lose to Miami to go to 6-2. Lose to Georgia Tech to go to 6-3. Beat Florida State to go to 7-3. Lose to Louisville to go to 7-4. And I believe they could beat Cal to go to 8-4. So Pitt goes 8-4 in 2026. Virginia Tech and Georgia Tech. Okay, so now we get to the sleeper category of the ACC. And my first sleeper team in the ACC for 2026 is the SMU Mustangs, who do return QB Kevin Jennings. And here in a second, we will pull up SMU's 2026 schedule. And here we go. So they start the year, week 1, at home on a Monday night. At Florida. They start the year at Florida State. I already told you I had them winning this game. They will beat Florida State. So they're 1-0. Play UC Davis week 2. They will win that. I think they can beat Louisville. So they're 3-0 going to the Missouri State game. Win 4-0. Win against Boston College 5-0. Then they play UVA. And we have not got to UVA yet. I think they beat UVA. So they're 6-0 going to the Cal game. Will they beat Cal? Yes. They go to 7-0. So they start the year 7-0. They get Syracuse on the road. That's a win. 8-0. They get Virginia Tech at home. I think this is where they stumble and take loss number 1 on the year. So they are 8-1 going into the Wake Forest game. They will beat Wake Forest to go to 9-1. And I'm going to say this. I think they upset Notre Dame. So they're 10-1 going into the Stanford game. It's at Stanford. I think they beat Stanford. So they're 11-1. Next sleeper team in the ACC. Next sleeper team in the ACC I have is the Virginia Tech Hokies. And they have a new head coach in Big Game James Franklin. And they start the year with VMI at home. That's going to be a win. I think they beat Old Dominion, so they're 2-0. They're going to beat Maryland, so they're 3-0. Beat Boston College 4-0. So they're 4-0 going into the Pitt game. And they will beat Pitt to go to 5-0. They will beat Cal to go to 6-0. Beat Georgia Tech to go to 7-0. And I'm going to say this. I do have Clemson as one of the favorites in the ACC, but I think this Clemson-Virginia Tech game is going to decide who goes to the ACC championship game this year. And here's why. Both teams are kind of working on a new QB this year, but we know Dabo, if Clemson has a bad year, Dabo could get fired. And the issue with Dabo getting fired is, you know what's going to happen. If Dabo gets fired, teams are not going to look at him and say, oh, this guy went 5-7 this year. They're going to look at him as, with all the accolades he's had, all the guys, the players he's had drafted, all the national championships he's had at Clemson. I think Virginia Tech, so they're 5-0 going into that game. I think they beat both SMU, because that was SMU's only loss. And I think they also beat Clemson. So they're 7-0 going into the game against Stanford at home. I think they go 8-0 after beating Stanford. They will lose to Miami. So they're 8-1. They go to 9-1. Something's wrong here. So they beat VMI, beat Old Dominion, beat Maryland, so they're 3-0, beat Boston College 4-0, beat Pitt 5-0, beat Cal 6-0, beat Georgia Tech 7-0, beat Clemson 8-0, beat SMU 9-0, lose to Stanford 9-1, lose to Miami 9-2, beat Virginia 10-2. So in year one under James Franklin at Virginia Tech, I have them going 10-2. My final sleeper in the ACC for 2026 is the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets. And Georgia Tech lost Jamal Haynes King to the NFL. But they still have Brett Key. And here is their schedule for 2026. They start the year against Colorado at home. and that's Dion. I think they're going to beat Colorado, so they're 1-0. I don't want to do this. This is in Atlanta. I think they can beat. They're going to lose to Tennessee, so they're 1-1. They play Mercer, they're 2-1. Beat Stanford 3-1. Lose to Duke 3-2. Lose to Virginia Tech 3-3. Beat Boston College 4-3. Beat Pitt 5-3. I think they upset both Louisville to get to 6-3. Clemson to get to 7-3. Beat Wake Forest to get to 8-3. Lose to Georgia 8-4. So Georgia Tech in 2026 is going to go 8-4, and that's why they're one of my sleepers in the ACC. Don't let them get hot. If they get hot, they can sneak into the ACC championship game. But you'll hear my ACC championship game prediction in a few minutes. Now we get to my favorites in the ACC, and I have 4. First one is Clemson. Let me take a look at Clemson's schedule. They open this season in Death Valley at LSU. And I know what everybody's going to say, oh, you can mark that down as a loss. LSU's got a completely new team, new coach in Lane Kiffin. I think Clemson goes in there, and I'm making a bold prediction right now. I think Clemson beats LSU. So Clemson's 1-0. They go to Georgia. Georgia Southern comes to Clemson, South Carolina. Clemson beats them. They're 2-0. They beat North Carolina, beat Cal, so that makes them 4-0. They get Miami. I think they lose to Miami, so they're 4-1. Then they get Charleston Southern. And I think they beat Charleston Southern. So they're 5-1 now. They lose to Virginia Tech 5-2. They're going to beat both Florida State to go to 5-2. Beat Syracuse to go to 6-2. Then they get Georgia Tech at home. That's a win. They're going to go to 7-2. Beat Duke 8-2. And lose to South Carolina 8-3. I did that wrong. So they beat LSU, beat Georgia Southern, beat North Carolina, beat Cal. So they were 4-0. Lose to Miami 4-1. Beat Charleston Southern 5-1. Lose to Virginia Tech 5-2. Beat Florida State 6-2. Beat Syracuse 7-2. Lose to Georgia Tech 7-3. Beat Duke 8-3. They go 9-3. Let me know, Clemson fans, in the comment section if you would like that. If you like that record for my for Clemson in 2026. Now, the next sleeper team in the next favorite in the ACC that I have is Miami. And Miami starts the first Miami starts the year at Stanford. And I told you, close, competitive game. I think Miami gets upset, so they're 0-1. They can't afford to lose more than 2 games now, even though the 12-team playoff does exist. They beat Florida A&M. They beat Wake Forest, so they're 2-1. They beat Central Michigan 3-1. They will beat Clemson. So they're now 5-1. They're going to beat Florida State 6-1. I think they dropped the Pitt game to go to 6-2. Beat North Carolina 7-2. I think they can beat Notre Dame to go to 8-2, beat Duke 9-2. I have them losing to Virginia Tech 9-3, and I think they're going to beat Boston College to go to 9-3. That's back to back. That's back to back 9-win seasons. And our last two favorites in the ACC, I'm going to go not over their schedules, but I'm going to give 9-3. My next favorite in the ACC is UVA. And let's look at their schedule. I have them going 9-3 this year. And same with Louisville, but let's look at. So Virginia opens the year with a neutral site game against North Carolina State. I have them winning that. Then they play Norfolk State. They're going to beat Norfolk State. Then they play West Virginia. And I believe that is a neutral site game, if I am correct. They will beat West Virginia. So they're 3-0. They're going to beat Delaware 4-0. I think they beat both Florida State. They beat Florida State to go to 5-0. Beat Syracuse to go to 6-0. Lose to Duke. Lose to SMU to go to 6-1. Beat Duke to go to 7-1. Beat Wake Forest to go to 8-1. Lose to Cal to go to 8-2. Beat North Carolina to go to 9-2. Lose to Virginia Tech to go to 9-3. Yes, all your favorites are going to have 9 wins. And the last favorite in the ACC that I have for this year is the Louisville Cardinals with Jeff Brom. And I apologize for earlier when I was doing North Carolina. We tried to pull up the roster, and all you got was a big screen with the Amazon logo. I'm sorry. So Louisville opens the season Sunday, September 6th against Ole Miss. I think they're going to, bold prediction, I think they upset Ole Miss. So they're 1-0. They get Villanova. They're going to go to 2-0. Lose to SMU 2-1. Beat Wake Forest 3-1. Beat North Carolina State 4-1. Beat Florida State 5-1. Beat Syracuse 6-1. Beat Stanford 7-1. Lose to Georgia Tech 7-2. Beat North Carolina 8-2. Beat Pittsburgh 9-2 and lose to Kentucky 9-3. I know Kentucky fans are not going to like hearing that. And my ACC championship game for 2026 is Virginia Tech and Miami. Yes, it's a rematch of a regular season game, but I believe these are the two teams, and everybody's kind of sleeping on Virginia Tech because they got James Franklin, and I don't think Big Game James is going to do anything. I think he will. And that is the first half of the show. Now we get to the second half, and now we get to my top 25 head coaches for the 2026 season. Honorable mentions go to Bob Chesney at UCLA and Billy Napier at James Madison. We start at number 25, Matt Campbell, Penn State. I never thought I would have to say the words Matt Campbell at Penn State. I thought he was going to be an Iowa State lifer. Apparently, I was wrong. So I like this, and I want to know what y'all think in the comments of my coach rankings. But Matt Campbell, love the hire for Penn State. They needed to get somebody new in there, and he's my number 25 head coach. Number 24 is Sonny Dykes at TCU. Sonny Dykes has turned TCU into a consistent 7 to correction. Sonny Dykes has turned TCU into a consistent 8-win team. They've won 8 games each of the last 3 years. And I think they can make it 4 this year in the Big 12. My number 23 head coach is Ole Miss's Pete Golding. He was the interim going into their playoff run last year. Their magical playoff run that ended at the hands of Indiana. Which, yes, Cignetti is in the rankings. I'm not telling you where. I'm not spoiling that. But I thought Pete Golding did an absolutely magnificent job at Ole Miss last year after Lane Kiffin left. That whole mess. My number 22 head coach is John Summerall taking over at Florida. Again, this is another great hire. Florida needed a new head coach after Billy Napier left and took the James Madison job when Bob Chesney left to go to UCLA. And Summerall comes in. He does bring some of his baggage, Louis luggage baggage from Tulane to Florida. I think the Gators are going to be good this year. My number 21 head coach is Miami of Ohio head coach Chuck Martin. Again, another team that is consistent with their winning ways. They win at max 7 games, 8 games a year. And you can't tell me that that's consistency. That is very much consistency, ladies and gentlemen. My number 20 head coach is Army head coach Jeff Monken. Coach Monken you don't really send your kids to the service academies to play football. You send them there to become good young men. And that's what Jeff Monken has done with Army. He's kept the winning consistent there. They win it between 6 to 8 games a year. They're always consistently in a bowl game since he's taken over as a head coach. My number 19 head coach is Duke head coach Manny Diaz. And I'm going to say something here. And I have my hands up for a reason. I was wrong when Manny Diaz got hired as the head coach at Duke. I said this was a horrible hire. He never had any success as a head coach. I admit when I'm wrong about something, I was wrong about Manny Diaz. He has been a wonderful hire for Duke as their head football coach. I will keep my mouth shut and not say anything bad about Manny Diaz anymore. My number 18 head coach, this one might be controversial. Kyle Whittingham, Michigan. I love what Whittingham did at Utah. He comes over to Michigan, and Michigan's admired in what the heck ever they are with the whole Ward Manuel situation and Jerome Moore getting fired. I'm not getting into the Jerome Moore thing, but with Ward Manuel, is he leaving or is he not leaving? Is he getting fired or is he staying? We don't have a definitive answer on that, but I would like to say this. I do think Kyle Whittingham was the best hire out there, even though he's probably only going to be at Michigan for 2 or 3 years. Then they're going to have to find somebody else because I think Whittingham was all set to retire and go into probably being an analyst until Michigan pried him out of semi-retirement, my number 17 head coach is Jed the Fish at Washington. Jed Fish, really good head coach. He was a good head coach at Arizona. He's done a really good job at Washington. I know what Washington fans are going to say. Oh, yeah, he's done a good job. But that whole debacle in the offseason with the transfer portal with Damon Williams, that's behind them. Damon Williams is back. And I think Washington is going to be a dark horse to make the Big Ten championship game this year. My number 16 head coach is Miami head coach Mario Cristobal. And I know what Miami fans are going to say. Oh, you're a hater. You don't like Mario Cristobal. No, I have two good reasons why he's not higher in my rankings. One, his clock management. And there's Miami fans out there that'll agree with me on this. His clock management sometimes is questionable. You look at the last 2 years against, I believe it was Georgia Tech. Yes, the last 2 years against Georgia Tech. You look at the clock management. The first time, you would think with 40 seconds left, run the ball or kneel it. He decides to, no, you would think just kneel it and get the game over with. Instead, he runs the ball, running back fumbles it, Georgia Tech picks it up, and I believe they end up winning, and the same thing happened last year. Now, Cristobal, I talk about it on my other show that I do for college football, the College Football Podcast, which you can see every Tuesday and Thursday, temporarily every Tuesday and Thursday. Normally it's only Thursdays, but we're doing Tuesdays and Thursdays right now, where I talk with Brad and we cover some of the same stuff you hear on this show on that one too. But my number 14 head coach is Auburn head coach Alex Golesh. Correction, I skipped 15. Number 15 is Mike Elko, Texas A&M. He led A&M to the playoff last year with Marcel Reed. Now, when they got to the playoff, the offense completely disappeared. Is the offense going to be really good this year again with Marcel Reed? Yes. Can they make the playoff again? I think they can. My issue is, are they going to fizzle out in the playoff again? Now we get to number 14, and that is head coach Alex Golesh at Auburn. We saw all the success Coach Golesh had at South Florida. Can he have that same success at Auburn? DJ Durkin stays at Auburn as the defensive coordinator, even though it's a new coaching staff. My number 12 head coach is Kenny Dillingham of Arizona State. I know they lost Sam Levitt to the portal. They did get Cutter Bully. And I believe Arizona State is still going to be one of the top contenders in the Big 12 this year. My number 11 head coach is Lincoln Riley of USC. Now, I know what people are going to say. Oh, Lincoln Riley needs to be out. He's not in the top 10. So you can get over yourself and just pipe down. I wasn't going to put Lincoln Riley in the top 10 because we know Lincoln Riley's known for his offense. Correct. But last year, he started to show us that he may know what having a defense is like too. Even though they still did give up a lot of points on defense, it seemed like the defense was coming into form toward the end of last year. If they could get the same type of defense this year, watch out for USC. And it's a big year for Lincoln Riley because, yes, he may not be fully on the hot seat, but if he struggles to start the year, he could get fired. My number 10 head coach, this is another controversial one. It is Kirby Smart of Georgia. And I know what Georgia fans are going to say, oh, it's because he hates the SEC. I don't hate the SEC. I just don't like how they choose to do their schedules. And I've cupcake games right before rivalry week, which that's going away because Last year and this year, they've had 9 games. So their cupcake games have to be earlier in the year now. But the reason Kirby Smart is at number 10 and not higher, it's because how he treats his players that get in trouble off the field. If he was a lot more strict on them, and from what I've heard, it seems like his stance on guys getting in trouble off the field is changing. From what I've heard from other Georgia fans is Kirby is stepping up. He's saying if you do something stupid off the field, like you get pulled over for speeding or possession of paraphernalia, you are suspended indefinitely. Good on you, Kirby Smart. Good on you for stepping up, for changing how you treat players that are dum-dums off the field. Yes, we try to keep it PG on this show. My number 9 head coach is Kalani Sitake from BYU. BYU was another team that should have been in the playoff last year, but got snubbed. They had a really good year. Sitake was getting offers from other schools, but he chose to stay at BYU. Props to him. And that's all I have to say. Number 8 is Joey McGuire at Texas Tech. And everybody wanted him to be on the hot seat going into last year, and he was. And I firmly believe if Texas Tech does not make the playoff last year, they don't splurge all that money into the portal last offseason, and they miss the playoff and only make a bowl game, Joey McGuire's probably looking for a new job somewhere else. Because Texas Tech probably fires him and they get a new head coach. But Texas Tech makes the playoff last year. Yes, I know they got absolutely obliterated in the playoff. But the key thing here is they made the playoff. Joey McGuire saved his job. And we now get to see Texas Tech this year hopefully make another playoff run, but without the services of transfer quarterback Brandon Sorsby. As everybody's probably heard on TikTok or YouTube or the internet somewhere, Brandon Sorsby will not be at Texas Tech because he was admired in a gambling issue that dates back to his time at Indiana. My number 7 head coach is Steve Sarkisian of Texas, the QB developer. And Sark, his seat is not very hot right now, but if Texas doesn't win a national championship within the next couple of years, I think we start to see Sark's seat heat up a little bit because he has Arch. My issue is Arch really that good, or is it just the media hyping him up? Yes, they did get Cam Coleman out of the transfer portal. They did revamp that wide receiver room. And I think Sark's going to have this team playing really good this year. My number 6 head coach is Alabama head coach Kalen DeBoer, or as people like to call him, Kalen DeBozo. But DeBoer, I think everybody knew that once Saban left, Alabama was going to take a slight step backwards. But we could see, can Alabama rise to dominance again and make the playoff in 2026 with either Austin Mack or Keelan Russell at quarterback? I like their chances with the true freshman better at QB and Keelan Russell than I do with Austin Mack. Because the issue with Austin Mack is yes, both of these guys are highly talented. But Austin Mack, just go watch the film. That's all I gotta say. Go watch the film. My number 5 head coach is Tennessee head coach Josh Heupel. And I just heard the news. Last night, they landed David Gabriel Georges, a 5-star running back that was down to Ohio State and Tennessee. And I guess the NIL package was big enough that Ohio State didn't want to respond, didn't want to match it. So David Gabriel Georges lands at Tennessee. And Heupel, this might put Heupel back on the map as one of the best, as one of the top recruiters in the SEC. My number 4 head coach is Rhett Lashley of SMU. You heard me talk about SMU as a sleeper in the ACC. I think Lashley is a sleeper for Coach of the Year. Simple as that. Number 3 is Dan Lanning of Oregon. Till they win a national championship, I can't put them ahead of the 2 guys that I have at number 2 and number 1. Oregon, they know how to recruit, and whether it be portal or high school guys. But until they win a national championship, I can't put their head coach at number 2 or number 1. Because my number 2 head coach, and this is not Ohio State biased at all. I will say that right off the bat. My number 2 head coach is Ryan Day of Ohio State. Yes, he did lose Brian Hartline to South Florida to go be for Brian Hartline to go be the head coach over there. But Ryan Day is still one of the best head coaches in the Big Ten. Yes, I know what Michigan fans are going to say. Oh, he's 1-4 against Michigan. Don't get me started on that. Because I can tell you that for 4 years, Michigan did cheat. And yes, I know what you're going to say. Oh, you're just salty because we beat you 4 years in a row. No, you cheated. It was proven. And you got to slap on the rest of the NCAA. That's all I'm going to say. I'm not going to rant about it anymore. But Ryan Day is one of the best head coaches in the Big Ten. And at number 1, it is Kirk Cignetti at Indiana. Kirk Cignetti, the reigning coach of the year, reigning national champion. And that wraps up my coaches, top 25 coaches for the year. This was a longer episode. If you enjoyed, please remember, like, subscribe. And I'm going to show you something before we get on, before the show ends. And I'm working on something for the website right now. But, and so far for CFB, because that's what we're focusing on, that and the NFL, we have the SEC standings up. Well, let me refresh. We have the ACC standings up for the season, the Big Ten standings, the SEC, and the MAC. All up on the website, as well as my best and worst games, weeks 1 through 4. Post-spring standings for the SEC, the Big Ten, the ACC, and the Big 12. The post-spring top 25 for both me and Brad. My college football trips, which in a previous video, I did mention what my future looks like there. So if you didn't watch that one, go watch that episode. And also the college football trips for Brad and me, which this year's we are still trying to figure out where we're going. We're waiting for media credential approval on a few spots. But, ladies and gentlemen, that wraps up today's episode of the Fourth and Long podcast. I hope you enjoyed. Hit the like button, subscribe. If you have any questions about college football, please leave them down in the comment section down below. Have a wonderful rest of your Thursday. I will see everybody Monday morning with another podcast episode. Have a lovely day, ladies and gentlemen.